Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and respected professional from Warsaw, Poland, Paulina Orbitowska-Fernandez. Paulina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation.
Thank
And
you. Paulina is a certified trainer of NVC, Edu Scrum coach, mediator, resonant language practitioner. She's a mind sonar analyst and an academic teacher. So, Paulina, a few questions for you personally before we get into nonviolent communication and empathy.
yeah.
What early experiences or influences first drew you to the world of communication and empathy?
Mm. Thank you for this question because it's an invitation for me to go back to those very first moments when I really felt that this is something important for me. And when I think about myself, I am recalling me as being, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 7 years old. I was born in still communist Poland
Mm-hmm.
and a smaller town. And in our town, we had this place, a center for children with some impairments, physical or mental impairments.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time in communist Poland, this part was absolutely separated. This center was separated from the whole town.
Yeah.
And I really felt a strong objection to it. I had like, oh no, why? Why? I was really
Mm-hmm.
curious about the way how those children uh, went to school, learned, what kind of toys they had. I was really curious about them, and I had a really strong objection about this kind of exclusion or separation.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, I was already maybe not an activist, but I was really following this non-violent movement of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And I was really curious because in Poland then we had those changes, political changes, and they were led in peaceful way. And I was really proud of that, really happy
Mm-hmm.
about that. And I was wondering, okay, so how can we cherish this? How can we learn to approach people in a non-violent way?
Mm-hmm.
That time at school, we had classes of like physical defense or like being ready for any kind of war.
Mm-hmm.
And during those classes, our teacher wanted us to learn how to shoot. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to touch
Mm-hmm.
guns because I
Yeah.
am a peace worker.
Mm,
So he asked me, okay, so what do I do with you? And I said, okay, so maybe I can do some presentation about nonviolent movement. And
mm.
then I presented Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and I was
Wow. Mm,
really curious about that. And I was also very curious about leaders. So I decided to study political science because I really wanted to learn about the leadership, this peaceful and powerful and courageous
mm.
leadership. So that's why I decided to study that. And then
Fascinating.
nonviolent communication came.
Absolutely. But you work across many sectors, Paulina.
Yeah.
What common challenges do you see leaders and teams facing today?
Yeah. Yeah. What I see nowadays is that the speed of work and life is
Mm,
going faster and faster. So
yeah.
whenever I support leaders, and whenever we talk, they say like, Paulina, I have no time for this human touch. They know that
Mm,
it's very important, building relationships, building trust, psychological safety. They know it's important, and at the same
mm,
time, they also have KPIs, they have goals, they
mm,
really need to fulfill them. So the biggest challenge nowadays is to know that without building relationship based on trust, empathy, and psychological safety, actually the KPIs are not going to be fulfilled. Okay, maybe yes,
mm,
but we can really have much more creativity and effectiveness in our teams when we are focused on the relationships. Of course,
mm,
not only. Yes, that's especially in business setting, but not only. So the biggest challenge for what I see is some people call it like VUCA world and bunny world. And this world is full of really rapid, in unexpected and really complex changes. So I can see that it is very difficult for the leaders to really be aware that we need to put
mm,
our presence and consciousness and energy into building
Mm,
relationships.
well said. Let's now talk about nonviolent communications.
Yeah.
How would you describe nonviolent communications to someone who has never heard of it?
Yeah, that's my biggest challenge because I like words, so I like using a lot of words.
Mm,
So if I meet someone, I would ask this person first, like, did you ever have or have you ever had a situation in which you really wanted to connect with someone
mm,
and it did not happen?
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then I would just, yes, you had, yeah,
many
thank
times, yes.
you. Yes, yeah.
Mm,
Uh, have you ever felt frustrated because you really wanted to be understood and you were not understood by someone?
yes, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, so this is where nonviolent communication can help because this is
mm,
an approach developed by American psychologist Dr. Marshall Rosenberg in the 1960s.
mhm,
And in this approach, the intention is to build connection, as he used to say,
mm,
and to have more understanding between us, to listen to each other, to be honest with each other,
mm,
and to learn how we can build our relationships based on dialogue, partnership, like power with paradigm, and empathy.
mm,
And NVC supports us to build a kind of mindset towards relationships, and also it gives us like easy to learn, maybe not easy, but like learnable tools that you can take into your everyday life. You can use
mm,
it at work, you can use it at home, you can also
mm.
use it in bigger social changes.
Right. Well
How did
said.
I manage?
Well said. And what
Mhm.
misconceptions do people often have about NVC?
Yeah. One of the biggest misconception that I find is about being nice. Some people
Mm,
think that when you learn nonviolent communication, when you have this empathic approach
mm,
towards others, it means that you will be nice,
right.
polite.
Mm,
And it is not what NVC is about. NVC is about being authentic. And of course, we do cherish kindness that is between us humans. But this kindness, it's not at the cost of your authenticity and
mm,
honesty. So
mm,
this is the biggest misconception that sometimes even people to me say like, oh, I thought that you're going to be nice and say yes to everything I say. And
mm,
it is about me taking care of my boundaries and being respectful towards your
right.
boundaries. So we have this win-win situation.
Amazing. Paulina, tell me, how can NVC transform the culture of an organization beyond just improving individual communication skills?
Yeah. Yes, with NVC, this is something very important that on one side you have those skills,
Mm,
communication skills, and on the other side you have something about learning new mindset. And this mindset is based on partnership culture. So that's how NVC transforms culture, that you become more inclusive towards others.
mm,
And thanks to this, there is more trust, there is more psychological safety, and there is more, I call it, not only me, but we from not only NVC approach, but we call it power with paradigm. So instead of being power over, and in hierarchical culture, using even sometimes violence towards
mm,
others to make them do what you want them to do, you become more into the power with paradigm. So we share the power, so we all grow.
mm,
So it has, I work with a lot of organizations and I can see that it has a really huge impact on organizational culture. It brings more
mm, mm.
authenticity, more trust, more psychological safety, and also it supports teams, organizations
Yeah.
in and leaders in giving and receiving really bold, honest feedback that is really helping in growth. So it also
Mm, mm.
sometimes we talk about learning organizations. So this is exactly where nonviolent communication can support.
Great response. Paulina, what role does listening play in nonviolent communication? And how can we cultivate listening more deeply?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Because even yesterday I wrote a post on LinkedIn about how listening is important
Mm,
in a leadership position. So yes, we have a very special approach towards listening. In NVC, we say that we don't only listen to the words, we listen to what is behind the words. And we do it on different levels. One level is to listen in silence to someone without trying to correct this person, but just listening to what is happening to this person with being fully attentive, of course, as much as it's possible in the social media and the rapid changing world. So we're listening in silence. Then what we do in NVC, we also paraphrase. So we try to reflect back what we heard so that we can really see whether the message sent is the message received. And oftentimes it results that what I'm hearing from you, it's not exactly what you wanted to tell me. So from this part, we can already try to clarify if I am hearing well. And also in this way, through the paraphrasing, we can also minimize the risk of kind of misunderstandings and conflicts. And also in this way, I can show you that you do matter for me, that you're important. And the last thing, what we do in NVC, this is very special thing about nonviolent communication. When we feel already safe in a relationship, because not always it's safe for some of us, we also ask the questions about what is behind the words. So we ask the questions about the feelings and needs. And for example, if my colleague tells me, Paulina, I can never count on you. So instead of saying like, oh, don't be so sensitive, or you're criticizing me, I would be more attentive. So I would ask the question like, oh, I'm just wondering, are you feeling frustrated? Maybe you need some more support from me, or maybe you need some understanding. Am I right? So we are checking. And in this listening, this kind of listening, we cultivate three important qualities. One quality is presence, our openness. And then the other is also curiosity. So we are really curious about the other person. We don't come from this position, oh, I know better what you want. I know better, or we don't criticize, but we are really listening. We are curious. And the other quality, the third one, is acceptance. So we accept that what the other person is telling me, it is the truth for you. This is how you see the world.
Amazing. What connections do you see between NVC, interpersonal neurobiology, and systemic thinking?
Yes. Yes, I even have here a model of a brain, so I can show you. Like I really like learning about interpersonal neurobiology, because when Marshall Rosenberg, the one who created nonviolent communication or developed nonviolent communication, he passed away still at the time when we did not have so many scientific relevances about our brains and how our brains work in interpersonal relationships. So after, when he passed away, some of us, some trainers, started searching even more into and finding some important cues, like why does empathy work? What happens to our brains? And Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, when he was teaching nonviolent communication, as he was a scholar, he had PhD in clinical psychology. Some of the people could not grasp it that easily. So he tried to teach us in a simpler way. So he used two animals to show us different approaches towards relationships. And he used a jackal. A jackal is a very small animal. To show us that some of us have this kind of approach towards relationship that we really have to fight and we have to win in all relationships. And then he also used the other animal using the physical features to symbolize this kind of more open approach and partner approach, which is giraffe. So he used those two animals. And to make it simpler for us to learn it. And then when I learned interpersonal neurobiology from my teacher, from Sarah Payton and from Daniel Siegel, what I learned is about the brain, that we have this part of the brain that is called limbic region of the brain, and there is this smaller part called amygdala, which is the emotional part of our brain and is scanning the reality all the time, and every millisecond we are trying to answer two questions. We even don't know it, but our amygdalas do it in our brains. And those questions are, am I safe, emotionally safe? And do I matter? And if those questions are, yes, you are, then we can go and we can use this upper part of our brain, which is prefrontal cortex. This is I call it like conscious manager, because this is the place of the brain where we can regulate our emotions, where we can use our creativity, where we are more prompt to cooperate with others. So how I connect it to NVC now? So as Marshall Rosenberg used to speak about those two animals, that we all have those two parts. The emotional part is this jackal that is scanning the reality all the time and trying to answer the question, am I safe here? Do I have to fight? So if I am in the fight mode, then I am more like in anger, in frustration, more defensive. Or maybe I'm scared, so I withdraw. So that's how I understand that. And we also have our giraffe part, which is a very long neck. Giraffes can see that the world is full of different diverse approaches, and we can really regulate our emotions, and I can make conscious decisions. This is how I teach NVC to the leaders, that we, instead of reacting, we can respond. So not reacting from our amygdala, not reacting from our jackal part, but from our giraffe part, from the prefrontal cortex, being really conscious about how I want to respond to some message.
Amazing. Very well explained. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's now talk about empathy.
Yeah.
You've built your career around empathy.
Yes.
What does empathy truly mean to you?
Yeah. Yes, and it's very important, because empathy can have different ways of understanding. Some people understand that empathy is stepping into someone else's shoes. And for me, it could be really risky, because if I step into the shoes of all the people with whom I work, then I can become emotionally overwhelmed, or even I can be really close to burnout if I do it, especially as a leader. So for me, and in NVC, empathy means that I am present for myself, but also for the other person. I am seeing that behind the words, whenever the context, regardless the context, the exact words of the people, I am with empathy. I am somehow like wearing this kind of lenses, that I am seeing a human being next to me. So I am trying to see what are their feelings and their needs. And thanks to that, if I see my feelings, so when I am empathetic towards myself and towards others, then I can build this win-win solutions, this win-win or power with relationships. So for me, empathy is like the basis, some kind of support or a frame that holds the relationships, but empathy understood in this way.
Well said. Well said. And based on all the work that you do, Paulina, what difference do you see in organizations that prioritize empathy and trust compared to those that don't?
Yes. First, what I see, what's important to especially business-like organizations, is that they have better effects, better results, business results, when they do have trust and psychological safety and empathy in and with empathy, I mean authentic empathy. Yes, it's not something fake, yes, that we just learn on some workshops, but it's something really true, coming from our heart. It is one thing. It is supporting collaboration within the team, but also between the teams, between different parts of the organization. I also work with in the medical sector, and what I see is that doctors with whom I work, physicians with whom I work, when they learn about self-empathy, they learn that I can also regulate, that they are also important for themselves. So what I can also see is that people who learn on an individual level NVC and empathy, they become more aware, and they take care of their well-being, and the levels of burnout and the stress levels go down. So what I see in the organizations that do learn NVC, and incorporated that in their culture, is that the turnout, that there are less people who are quitting the job,
Mm.
so they have more belonging to this organization. So
Mm.
I only
Very good.
see the positive side of that.
Absolutely. Well
It
said.
of course takes time to learn. Yes, it's not that it sounds simple, as
Mm.
Marshall Rosenberg used to say, but it's not that easy. Yeah.
Mm. What role does empathy and dialogue play in bridging divides in our increasingly polarized world?
Yeah, I think this is crucial. This is what's um, also alarming me. I feel really sad when
Mm.
I see the world so polarized, and people
Mm.
who, instead of connecting with empathy and openness, they
Yeah.
blame, criticize each other, and there is a lot of violence
Yeah.
happening nowadays. So this is for me the crucial, the basics, that when we see that there is another human being who has maybe different political views or
Mm.
social views, but still is a human being who is trying to do their best
Yeah.
to fulfill their needs. And if I open my heart and if I
Mm.
listen to that and I see those needs, we can easily connect.
Mm.
So we can actually bridge those gaps
Yeah.
between us and minimize this risk of producing more violence in our society.
Mm. Amazing. I have time for two more questions for you.
Yes.
Can empathy ever be too much? And if so, how can it be channelized productively?
Yes. So empathy can be too much if we think that empathy is stepping into someone else's shoes, feeling
Mm.
what you feel.
Yeah.
If yes, if we understand empathy in this way, then yes, it is very risky
Mm.
because some people call themselves that they are empaths, and then they are overwhelmed and emotionally exhausted very easily. So
Mm.
this, yes. If we think about empathy in the way how in NVC we understand it, so I am understanding your feelings and needs, I am understanding my feelings and needs, and we are both thinking what can we do
Mm.
to fulfill your and my needs, so to make the world more beautiful, even I would say, to find
Amazing.
those win solutions.
Well
So in
said.
this
Mm.
way, it is impossible to have
Mm.
too much empathy because I am, in this constant choice, am I empathetic towards myself now, a bit to you, and this is in this dynamic dialogue between us.
Mm. Amazing. And my last question for you, Paulina. Tell us
Mm.
about your Time for Empathy initiative. What was
Yes.
the inspiration and what impact has it had globally?
Yes. So I really love event. It is 1 week of workshops that are offered by trainers from all over the world for
Hmm.
free for all the people from the whole world. And this year, the next year, 2026, it's going to be, I think I was trying to calculate, I think it's going to be the 8th edition or 9th edition already of that.
Hmm.
The inspiration was of one person who invited me to work with them. It's Magdalena Malinowska,
Hmm.
who developed Empathic Way Europe. We are a team of 4 people, 4 trainers, and we share nonviolent communication online and globally.
Hmm.
And she was inspired by another trainer from Poland, from Asia Berendt, who invented something that we call nowadays marathon of empathy.
Hmm.
And it is also like different workshops offered by trainers from all over the country, from
Hmm.
Poland, this marathon of empathy, for free also. So Magda was inspired by this Polish event,
Hmm.
and she invited me to collaborate in this event in English. And I am already inviting all of the people who would like to learn more about empathy. It is absolutely for free. We have thousands of people from all over the world, so we are
Hmm.
also like connecting through the cultures, through
Yeah.
the differences that we bring to this community. And then you can learn from different trainers. So it's also really inspiring, and it's really diverse. So it's going to happen next year, 2026. It's going to be from the 1st till 8th of March. You
Okay.
can all book it in your calendars, and yes, and you
Amazing.
will.
Amazing. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners will make a note of the date 1st to 8th of March for Paulina's Time for Empathy initiative. But on that note, Paulina, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. I learned many new things from you today from about nonviolent communications as well as empathy. Thank you
Thank you.
again and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation, and hopefully see you somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.